Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from the Mully and Haugh show on 670 The Score. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune covering the Bears at Halas Hall. And we are pleased today to bring in the director of Hard Knocks, Shannon Furman, who is in Chicago, Lake Forest more accurately, in charge of the Hard Knocks HBO production that everyone enjoyed on Tuesday night. Shannon, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Welcome. You've been in town for a while now. Just curious, we can start with, how was the feedback from episode 1 that everybody enjoyed, and our station 670 The Score would like to thank you for providing?
I think it's been, well, thanks for having me first. But I think it's been pretty positive. I try not to troll Twitter and stuff too much, but from everything I've seen, it looks like people really enjoyed it, especially people in this area. The team was very happy. People at HBO were happy. Everyone at Films is happy. So it was a fun morning.
Shannon, thanks for doing this. It's obviously a really cool project overall, and you guys have arrived here at a time where the Bears are in a bit of a landmark time in their history. And I'm just curious how you guys in the outset, when this opportunity arose, went about deciding what your greatest intrigue was of chronicling this team in this moment with so many things that are happening right now.
Yeah, we do a ton of research on our own, but we like to get input from the team, from people around the team. We have a producer at Films who is a diehard Bears fan, so he has been a huge help in this whole process, giving us different storylines. The Michael Jordan theme song and getting Ray Clay involved in all of that. That was his idea this week, so he's been very helpful. People have asked me a lot about like where our ideas come from, and I would say 50% of it we kind of know going in, and then 50% of it just unfolds as the practices are happening. We learn a ton during those 3 days where it was just rookies or like second-year guys out there, and you can kind of go all in and mic people that you may have never really heard of or knew too much about. So we learned a lot in that week, and just as things unfold in games, like Colin Johnson, he was on our radar. We knew about him a little bit, but you score 2 touchdowns in a game, you're going to find yourself on Hard Knocks.
Shannon, let's go back to the introduction for a moment, because I think that really resonated with people in Chicago of a certain age. I can tell you from hosting the Mully and Haugh show on Wednesday morning, that in terms of texters and callers came up, I think, more than any other snippet. Well, maybe Nick Saban, but what went into that idea? Because I thought it was brilliant. Caleb Williams, for people who have been here for a while, is kind of like a guy, if he's the Bears quarterback, wins a Super Bowl, he is Jordan-esque in terms of stature. And I think that's what the idea of this series is. That's why Hard Knocks is, on the Bears. So a little bit more, if you could, what about how did the genesis or the origination of the idea to introduce him in that way?
Yeah, honestly, like we had been here a couple days filming the team, and I got an email and it was kind of all written up. Eric Powers is the person's name, diehard Bears fan, like I said. Kind of told us how Ray Clay's still in the area. We reached out. He was willing to help us out. He was actually on vacation, so we had to kind of figure out like exactly when he would be home, helped us find a studio, do all that. The home office had to make sure they could clear the music. So once they told us that was good to go, we knew we were all in with it. And then just had to, it's not even something that you have to ask Caleb to do. He's walking out to the field every day. So we just had to pick the appropriate equipment and things to figure out the way we wanted to capture it. Had a couple different camera folks on it to get it from inside the locker room out to the field. So just kind of storyboarded out that whole process. And I thought it worked really well.
Shannon, as an extension of that, you guys obviously are playing a big role in sort of lifting the curtain on Caleb Williams, QB1 of the Chicago Bears, to a national audience. And as you've gotten to know Caleb, as you've gotten to know this team a little more, what appeals to you most and what strikes you the most about this introduction of this kid with so much talent to this national audience that's going to have their eyes on his career for the long haul?
Honestly, I think it's his maturity. Like, I would never guess that he was a rookie. The way he's handled things and just carried himself at this camp, he seems like he's like a 5th-year guy. He's been doing this for a long time. Like if my mom were out here, I don't think she would know that he was a rookie right now. So that's the biggest thing that I've seen about him, the way that his teammates are taking to him too, which I think is all part of that. Like the fact that he comes off as mature as he is, just seems like he really has a great grasp of the locker room at this point, and it's only going to continue to get better.
Along with that, this isn't the first time you've had the number 1 overall pick on Hard Knocks. Obviously, LA in 2016 with Jared Goff, 2018 with Baker Mayfield. Did those experiences inform the way you went about kind of the process with Caleb here? Is there anything that translates between those experiences and then what the one that we're going through right now with Caleb is?
I mean, for sure. Like Jared is still a close friend of mine. And I think we learned, like, the blimp scene gets brought up a lot, where he wasn't sure where the sun was setting and rising. And I mean, we laugh about it now, but I think at first it was kind of brutal for him. It was something that we thought was funny. He thought it was funny at the time. And then when you go on and you don't have a ton of success your rookie year, all of a sudden it's like you become dumb. And it's like, he's not dumb. That's ridiculous. So I think we are much more aware of things like that in this day and age, and want to like make sure nothing like that would happen with Caleb. But yeah, like they're all different. Baker's very different than both Jared and Caleb were, and the amount of exposure he had to the media at that time. He had a whole show following him around, like leading into the draft process. So I think, and we do this with everyone, not even just the first overall pick of the draft, like everyone's their own person. So you get to know people and figure out like how best to deal with them and what works for them, what works for us. And it's all part of this whole process with this show, is just meeting people and figuring out personalities.
Let's go to the Nick Saban inclusion, because that to me was one of my favorite parts. And I don't know if it was good fortune or you just took advantage of the opportunity. Nick Saban shows up at Bears camp. He is a mentor to Matt Eberflus. He was coach. Matt Eberflus was player at Toledo back in the day. I wondered, number one, if that was accidental or by design. And secondly, once he was there, their interaction, was that staged or was that just a natural meeting and they were on each side? It just seemed perfect, because that I could have watched even more of that had there been more of that.
I mean, I wish I could stage a scene with Nick Saban. That was definitely not staged. Yeah, no, I believe he was in the area for a speaking engagement. He's like you said, he is a mentor to Coach Eberflus. So I think he was in town speaking for something. I believe that's what Coach told me. And when he heard that, he was like, I want to get him over here to help talk to the team and everything. So it was perfect timing, worked out for all of us. We obviously have the building covered properly to get those moments on camera. And you're probably right. There probably is a whole lot more that we could use from those conversations. I mean, he's a fascinating coach who's had a ton of success, and their relationship really is genuine.
To go along with that, there are so many storylines here that are really compelling. And from the outside looking in, it feels like the hardest part must be trying to narrow it down and pick the best of what you have. You know, Nick Saban's scene is one that I wrote down last night, was one I wanted more of. The trip to the Hall of Fame, something I wanted more of. The DJ Moore contract extension, I wanted more of. You guys are confined to a 55-minute block. How do you go about kind of identifying the best of the best, and then also just trying to figure out how do we do this and tell this story in a way that's meaningful, while also understanding we're going to have to leave a lot of really good stuff on the cutting room floor?
I think you have to decide, like, you have to know you have 4 more shows. So it's kind of like, what can you hold on to for another show? I know there was a player that we really liked that we thought was going to be introduced this week, and then Colin goes and scores 2 touchdowns in the game. All of a sudden you're scrambling, like, I need to go get a shoot with Colin tomorrow. So we went to the coffee shop with Colin the day after the game happened. So that happens all the time. So you just have to adapt, kind of. Sorry, crew's walking through. Yeah, so I think it's just, what can you hold on to? What has to be used in the moment because of the timeliness of it, like the Jonathan Owens situation. the Olympics are very timely. It's obviously happening right now. So that all needed to be included in this show. It's really important to us that Jonathan's football story gets told too, though. So you're going to be seeing more of that in coming weeks, kind of his journey and how he made it from the Packers to here and what his career's been like. So I think that's the most important thing, knowing what you can hold on to and what you can't. There's obviously going to be a guy or two that we love who doesn't get introduced in the show, but I really try. One of the things that since I've been the director of the show, I really don't want to waste people's time. So when we find somebody that we like, instead of, I always say it's quality over quantity. We'll put more resources at finding the right people and make the scenes we do with them as good as they possibly can be, instead of just like running around shooting everything that's happening and having nothing actually hit. So that's just part of my process, is trying to figure out who the right people are and telling their stories properly, putting the resources towards it so that you can tell the proper story. Sorry, it's our lunch window, so everyone is starting to run through my quiet area right now.
Well, I appreciate you hanging in there. So you've been involved with this for a long time, Shannon. You've been involved with a lot of other Hard Knocks teams and preseasons. And I'm just curious, this was something that a couple people mentioned this morning and it stood out to me. You've been in football locker rooms, you've been in football environments. It can be a profane place to be. And obviously language is a big part of every football team's experience and dialogue. I didn't notice much of that language at all on the first episode of Hard Knocks. I don't know if that was accidental. I don't know if that was a request of the McCaskies. I don't know how that would have happened, but it just maybe was dumb luck, because there wasn't, I don't think, any occasion that we had to think that, number one, we had to beep something out for a clip we played on the radio. And secondly, it was something the whole family could enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's important to the McCaskey family, but also like Coach is kind of funny because he'll say to me like, I'm not going to curse today. And I'm like, Coach, I haven't heard you curse yet. Like, so I don't think that's going to be different than any other day. It's definitely something that like, we've all said it. Like, it's like, have you heard anyone curse here yet? So it's definitely something. And I've also heard Coach say like, you know, like, I know he's watching his language, but I think that's just who he is. I think he's like that, even if there are not cameras around. So it's something we've all been impressed by being here. So yeah, like it's definitely different. Everyone's a little different. We've heard that in the past too, with different shows where people will say like, oh, like, I don't want to look like Rex Ryan looked. And you're like, well, Rex wanted to look how he looked. And I think he looked great. But like, if you're not Rex Ryan, you're not going to look how Rex Ryan looked. So it's all about how you are the person. We try to be as authentic as possible to who everyone is. And, you know, no two people are the same.
If you're seeking a little more profanity, I can give you a short list of guys to follow around for a couple of days, and I'm sure that can get done. But you're obviously dealing with a group of players nowadays that has almost grown up in the camera, right? And their existence has been on social media. I'm curious, in your time working with the show, how that's changed. You know, there's always the thought of how much of an intrusion is this going to be, and now it seems like there's a whole generation of people that don't feel like it's an intrusion at all because it's the way they lived their life for 20 plus years.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it right there. I've seen it change just from 2015 was my first year as the assistant director on this show till this. So this is my 10th season now doing this. And kids have just grown up like documenting their every move and whatnot. So it's definitely different now. I don't think we've interacted with one play. I'm trying to think if there's been one person here who's like told us they don't want to be a part of this. But I don't think it's happened. I think every single wire request we've made has gone through. So it's been kind of nice. And it wasn't always like that at the beginning. You know, it was different. I mean, but I guess going back to, I remember Jared Goff saying to me, he grew up on this show. So that was in 2016. So it is a different type of person. I started editing on this show. My first season at Films was 2004. So I edited on the Chiefs version of the show, which I believe was 2007. And then the Cowboys did it, and like Tony Romo didn't want to be mic'd. I'm not sure if Tony Romo ever even wore a mic for that show. So, and I know Matt Ryan, it was kind of difficult to do it. And we have other ways to figure out how to cover things. You know, you're around the quarterback group and stuff, so you still get access to those guys. But it is a whole different generation of guys who kind of, they get it more. They get the branding, they get what the exposure can do for them. And It's made our lives a little bit easier.
So early on, did anything stand out to you that was unique about whether it was Hallis Hall, the Bears organization, somebody you're dealing with? I know that there's almost the inevitability that Caleb Williams is going to be maybe the star of the show, but just curious from your perspective as you took in all that you were taking in immediately, if anything, or what did stand out to you about what made this maybe experience unique?
Yeah, I mean, I probably can't talk too much about it yet because there'll be characters that we're developing. But I think some of the guys on the team that are going to be trying to make this team, I feel like we have some of the best stories we've ever had. Just like genuinely good people who have goals and like things going on in their lives that like it's going to be really cool for us to tell some of these guys stories about their journey of making this team. And I think you'll start to learn about some of them this week. We love the quarterback room as a whole. So, I mean, I think it works out for us that, Caleb Williams is the number one pick of the draft and stuff this year, but all the guys in that room are pretty awesome. So we like that whole group and we're hoping that we can make them all a part of this whole experience. They've been great so far. So hopefully you'll see more of them this week too. And just another thing of note here, like this facility is beautiful. So just the layout of camp and where we are, like with the marshes and things like that, like flying the drone early in the morning, it looks visually, it's kind of stunning here. It's been pretty awesome.
On the topic of the quarterbacks room, one of the clips that came out during the Hall of Fame game was obviously that clip of Caleb Williams announcing his signing bonus and Tyson Bagent having the fake seizure in the front row. I'm curious what you've learned about Tyson as the backup quarterback here. And obviously he's had a few press conferences here at Haugh Hall that have been entertaining as well, as a guy who's full of character, so to speak.
Yeah, we love Tyson. He's definitely on our radar. So hoping to get more into him this week. Again, don't want to give too much away about things we may have already done with him, but I loved that. I also loved his reaction to the singing. Like when you see him singing along with the Proud to Be an American, like that was one of my favorite moments in the show. I said that to my assistant director when we were watching last night. I said, "Did you notice Tyson's reaction yet?" And he started looking at him and was like, "Oh my God, I hadn't." So yeah, he's definitely someone we want to get more into, and hopefully he'll get some more playing time here in this week's game and we can do that.
Shannon, you're talking to somebody who arm wrestled Tyson Bagent's father on television in Chicago. So I know the family story very well. And so I would suggest, if you haven't already figured it out, my sense is you have, Travis Bagent is good TV. Travis Bagent is excellent theater. And he is a guy that would be, I would definitely recommend. I know you probably already have. You know all this stuff. I'm not telling you how to do your job.
Yeah, we would love to make him part of the show. I've heard he's been a difficult get at this point, but we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. And yeah, he's a good arm wrestler, but he did not beat me, although it was a setup. We all know it was a setup. So I wondered how coincidental it was that Austin Reed's parents were just perfectly timed. Mic'd, and then the reaction was classic when they called the game and the dad wanted to see his son play for another quarter, and yet it wasn't going to happen. And every sports dad could relate to that feeling.
Yeah, so I mean, Austin is somebody that was on our radar. We had a relationship with him from the Manning Passing Academy back when he was still in high school. So he's somebody we've had a good relationship for a long time. So we just kind of asked him if his family was coming to the game. We knew he'd get some playing time, being that was the Hall of Fame game. And he told us that they were. So that was kind of how that all came about. And some of the producers said we were kind of bummed that it did start raining when it did. It would have been great to see him get some more playing time. But we even had a couple producers at home who, similar to the sentiment you said about being a father and whatnot, like they said that they got like teary-eyed seeing the dad's reaction, like to him coming into the game. So hopefully you'll get to see a little bit more of him in the coming weeks.
Shannon, this is my 12th year covering this team, and I can't remember a group in the locker room that has such a surplus of personality and character and vibrance. I imagine that makes it a little more difficult for you guys to zero in on just a few that you get to tell over 4 or 5 weeks. But what struck you about the overall makeup of the team, and then I guess by extension, the difficulty of trying to figure out which ones are most compelling to tell the story of?
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, when players make plays in the game, that certainly helps get them into the show. Just moments like in the team room, like you had Theo Benedette singing this weekend. That's a way to do it also. So there are definitely guys that are on our radar, and then sometimes like they don't get in because someone else does something that's like a little bit more memorable. But like we try our best to get the guys that we really like and who have been working with us, figure out ways to make sure that their story gets told in the show.
Shannon, we really appreciate your time. Last question from me. So much was made, obviously, before you arrived, that the Bears never wanted to be on Hard Knocks. And George McCaskey was a big reason why. There was a lot of resistance. The family didn't like it. How have those interactions been with George specifically? And because of that history or that past, have there been any impediments that maybe didn't exist at other places?
No, I mean, the team has been great and George has been great. You know, I mean, I don't know that you'll see him on TV or anything, but he's been super welcoming. Everyone here has been very welcoming. I think it's relationship building, honestly. The fact that like we had some time to get to know people. I made 3 different trips here before we started filming. So you just start building trust. You get to know each other on a personal level, and it's not about the show and what you're doing that way. Just know my background, where I come from, how long I've been doing this, why I love doing this. And then you just form a mutual respect for each other and whatnot. So it's been really great. Having a lot of fun doing this year. Last year wasn't the easiest at times because it was so late. Like we didn't know about the show till a couple of days before it with the Jets last year. So it took more time for those relationships to build. So the fact that we had some time this year to really get to know everybody leading into this process was huge and has been very helpful in I think we've been here for a little over 3 weeks now. So it's been really great.
George might be actually pretty interesting TV. He rides a scooter. He's a Cub fan, and I think he's a guy that he's also a youth umpire. So I think if you wanted to follow him around, you could find something.
I'll see. I'll try and pitch it to him. I don't know how it'll go, but
Shannon,
he's been great. He's been great though. The interactions around the facility with him and everything, it's been a lot of fun.
2 last quick ones from me. A technical question. Can you give our audience a feel for the size of your team that's working on this project here at Lake Forest and what the process is from gathering to filtering to selecting to actually piecing together a show? Because I imagine that's pretty fascinating behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, so the Cliff Notes version of that is there's 35 of us here on location right now, and then there's probably another team about that size at home back in Mount Laurel, New Jersey at NFL Films. So we have on any given day at least 8 cameras at practice. They're not all on the field. Some are elevated. So we say there's about 400 hours of film shot not film anymore, but video shot for every episode that goes on the air. It's just there's a lot of communication that goes into it with us in the home office and the way the project is organized. Producers are given a character. So last week, someone was assigned Caleb, someone's assigned the wide receiver group, someone's assigned coach. And then there's a whole nother couple people who are in charge of making sense of those segments that are put together, everything that everyone cuts. Then there's a whole nother team that works on the game separate from what goes on during the week. So I like to tell people at this point, it's like kind of like a choreographed dance, the way everything goes. We've been doing this, I want to say this is the 23rd season. They weren't all consecutive, but over 20 years of doing this show. We learn something new every year that we can make the show better for the following year. But at this point, we have a ton of resources to do this the right way. I get phone calls all the time, like, I want to do Hard Knocks for rugby, and I want to do Hard Knocks. And I start explaining our process, and they're like, oh, wait, no, we can't do that. And that's when I kind of realize how lucky we are at the resources we have to be able to put a show like this on the air. I mean, it really is like a monster that's just grown, and like, we have had a lot of time to figure out how to do this the right way and not be a distraction and just kind of fall into the background and get to tell people stories.
And then just to tie a bow on everything, obviously the episode 1 started exactly where it needed to start. The phone call on draft day. We understand who the headliner of this team and this program is right now. It's Caleb Williams. He's the most fascinating athlete in Chicago sports right now, one of the most fascinating athletes in the country. How much more Caleb Williams can people expect in the next month as they tune in every Tuesday night to see Hard Knocks?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect to see Caleb in every show. I don't know if it'll be quite as much as it was in last night's episode. He was obviously one of our main focus for last night, but like I told you guys, like we love the quarterback room as a whole. So even if it's not like seeing him as the feature of it, like I imagine he'll be around those guys a ton, obviously, and we really want to tell their stories also. So I think you'll be seeing Caleb in the other episodes too.
Great stuff, Shannon. You have been terrific explaining it. The first episode was fantastic. We all look forward in Chicago to the rest of the series. And obviously, this feels like it's game night every Tuesday in town. So thank you for your time, and best of luck, and enjoy your stay here.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
And
Shannon.
thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast. You can find us on your free Odyssey app. You can watch us on the 670 Scores YouTube page. For Dan Wiederer and Adam Studzinski, I'm David Haugh. We'll talk to you next time.
Great talk. See you out there.